experienced Tres Dias, the first thing I guess I could say is that I didn't learn anything new necessarily that I'd never heard before. But the miracle of Tres Dias for me was I slowed down long enough to be impacted by the love of God. You see, I found that there's quite a difference between talking about the love of God and really experiencing it. There are many things that we go, oh, sure, I know what that is. But when we're finally slowed down for 3 days and have an opportunity to have people truly give the love of God through their actions, their attitude, their servant lifestyle, you can't leave without being impacted. And so it was one of those opportunities, those rare opportunities, that in the middle of an incredibly busy life and lifestyle, I was able to realize that I can experience God like that anytime. But Tres Dias opened the floodgate for me to learn the value of slowing down and really spending time, quality time, with the Lord.
How have you seen this impact and change the body, the church?
Everyone is profoundly impacted, but there were two groups that are noticeably impacted. We have had actually so many that I couldn't count them, and in particular men who came to church basically because it was the right thing to do, or their kids were there, or their wife drugged them, or whatever was motivating them to get in the building. Rarely saw them other than on Sunday morning, and they usually, might have fished or golfed one of those Sundays out of the month. And they go to Tres Dias, and all of a sudden they come back and they are passionately wanting to have a relationship with the Lord. Because in the 3 days when they are slowed down, and it's no longer a routine, it takes a little while to break down all of our inhibitions and our defenses to where anytime we hear the gospel, we're always going to be confronted, and most of the time we run from confrontation. But when the loving environment that is provided by the Tres Dias environment comes in, and then a person begins to realize it's safe to really be real, and to allow some people to really know where I struggle, where I'm at, what I need, it radically changes their lives. And they come back and they don't want to play church anymore. They really want to be active. So we've seen both extremes. We've seen those who really didn't understand a vibrant relationship with the Lord radically changed and have that relationship. And then we've also seen people who know the Lord, who walk faithfully with the Lord, but in the journey had lost some of the intensity and the drive to be everything that God had called them to be, to just see that renewal come into their life.
I went off to Tres Dias on that first Thursday night like everybody else does, and when I got there I kept thinking to myself, what am I doing here? That was my first kind of reaction. Why did I say yes to this? And but unbeknownst to myself, I was pretty much burned out at that point in terms of ministry. In fact, I'd been really contemplating, thinking seriously maybe about giving up ministry, because I felt so empty and out of touch with God, and I felt that I was just kind of marking time. I didn't know really what was going on in my life. And I must say that those 3 days away with God, for me as a pastor, gave me back not only my spiritual bearings, but it gave me back in a real sense my ministry, because when I went home from there after those 3 days, something wonderful happened those 3 days. I really I'm very grateful for Tres Dias in my own life. It has, like I said, given me back my ministry, put a lot of joy in my life, given me a lot of wonderful Christian friends, not just in my own congregation, but really all over the place. My feeling is that when you give people a wonderful Christian experience, they bond together as brothers and sisters, and it makes that journey so sweet. And Tres Dias is like that too. I think it binds you together in Christian love and gives you a journey through life that's sweet. And I think that's my kind of take on that, at least. In about 10 days, I'll be off on another weekend. This will be my 17th weekend, I believe, going back as a spiritual director. And I wouldn't have missed it. I mean, not every one of them has been perfect weekends, because there's nothing perfect in this world, but they've all been good. And most of them have been what I would call 5-star. I mean, they really, really touched my life and hopefully touched the life of other people. The effect on the church has been really pronounced. I think, as I said a little bit earlier, The thing that we really are hoping for is when people come back, they will get into small groups. They will be involved in small group ministry. They will get involved in share groups, study groups, care groups. We don't, those churches that have started it, and I can point to them. Those churches that have really taken this thing and used it are churches that are growing spiritually. And I have people come off, and they want to know now, how can they use their gifts? They come back and they want to, now they realize they're leaders. They're leaders for Christ. They want to be leaders for Christ. And so they're asking me, how can we use our gifts? And I say, any way you want.
Tres Dias means to you now?
Well, I didn't know about Tres Dias until we were in Korea. Matter of fact, I was a colonel in the military, 46 years old. I've been a Christian since I was 32. And I attended a weekend, and it was one of the most profound experiences in my life.
What did Tres Dias mean to you?
Well, I can tell you the exact words I said on my weekend. I remember them very vividly. I had, at that time and since then, attended many wonderful Bible studies and retreats and all that sort of thing, but I had never experienced the unconditional love of God as I did on that weekend, and I wanted to take that back to my community.
Of course, I learned the love of God, the love of Jesus. It was real to me.
That's great.
And the other thing was about the humility. Even before I was a Christian, and even after that, I was, in a way, I was an arrogant. I had, so I learned the humility. And also, one of the main theme of Tres Dias is to go and make disciples, which is I'm trying to do. So actually, I work as a missionary in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And also, I try to be a good father and a good husband.
That's great.
The family is very important.
What did Tres Dias mean to you?
Oh. Sometimes there's a tagline that I've heard used for Tres Dias, an encounter with the living God. And I can't think of anything that sums it up any better. When I went to my Tres Dias weekend, and it was God's timing. There's no two ways about it. We were dealing with and coming out of a major crisis, and I went in there cold and hard as a rock. And the Lord just met me right where I was and turned me inside out. And I had an encounter with the living God.
Good.
And it sounds so much like a cliche, but it really was a life-changing experience. I have never been the same. I never will be.
What does Tres Dias mean to you? So what does it mean to you today?
Well, it means quite a bit. When I first entered the weekend, I knew very little, if anything, really about Tres Dias, and some friends had asked us to go. I had been in full-time ministry for quite a long time. I'd been married only for 1 year, and during that year, my husband and I went through a real hard time in our marriage, and to the point that I had seriously considered divorce. It was affecting my ministry. I just felt totally drained. So they invited us to this weekend. At first I thought it was some kind of marriage thing and I wasn't interested, but she told us we went separately, and I said, okay, sign me up. And I said I'd go. And God just did a tremendous work. Not that I learned anything new, but His love was so great. And it was during that weekend that the Lord really healed the way I felt shattered inside. And when I went home, the problems were still there. They just didn't disappear. But God had changed me in such a way that He gave me the strength to begin focusing on our problems. And I'm just very thankful that the Lord did heal our marriage, has made it very strong. Both of us are very active in the ministry now.